So we've been exploring some of the build options and some of the gear, working our way through Baldur's Gate 1, leading to Dragon Spear, and of course Baldur's Gate 2. Essentially breaking out the classes, the characters, whatever class you're going to be, essentially close assault, physically getting up there and laying the smack down with that warhammer, sword, mace, whatever it's going to be. Maybe it's a two-handed weapon, maybe it's an offhand and a primary, maybe it's a single weapon. Then on the opposite side, we have ranged attacks, darts, daggers, bolts, and arrows. And I was going to say the middle, but not really the middle, a completely separate category, magical attacks, whether it's arcane or divine. A perfect example of this would be magic missile, but it could be something a little more obscure, like insect swarm on there with range. And we've looked at the pros and cons, the tactica, the advantages of close assault and magic. Now we're going to look at leveraging attacks through missile weapons. Now, if you're playing in a party, generally you want to have one or two support characters that are able to utilize bows. They are more efficient in terms of magical obtainment. There's a couple of, I'm trying to be very, very careful here with any spoilers. It's easier to find and utilize magic bows than it is crossbows. There's also a question of load time and speed. Bows are generally faster, and it's easier to get proficiencies in them depending on the class that is utilizing them. So that's your first kind of decision on there. And the advantage is range really isn't as important as Baldur's Gate as the rules, as the manual kind of makes it out to be. And certainly being a port from AD&D, a very good job of it, range in AD&D is more important because the dungeon master running the game literally can have combat on a much greater scale controllable by the players. Baldur's Gate, whether it's your computer or your phone or your tablet, you're limited to that click screen. So in terms of range, you're pretty much always in range. The advantage here, of course, is being able to attack every single turn. Being able to attack every single turn and leverage that damage. So as soon as I see a target, I click on the target, I start shooting arrows. A fighter or a character utilizing close assault will have to walk up there or run up there if you've got hasted or if you're speeded up. Then you're going to be able to engage. After you kill that target, you're going to have to move to the next target. This is usually pretty easy simply because the AI of the game and the mobs want to kind of just swarm on the closest. But occasionally things could get a little spread out as you engage multiple enemies on there. You might not be able to attack every round. So from that perspective, bows have a tremendous advantage. There's also, or missile weapons have a tremendous advantage. There's also the idea of target priority. Often what you're going to see, and it makes sense from a narrative, from a role-playing game, it also absolutely makes sense from the tactics of the AI, you're going to have summons and lesser monsters moving forward, or maybe some of the lieutenants that are more close combat assaulted, and the mages, the spellcasters, they're going to be hanging out in the back, chucking stuff at you. Having a missile-type weapon not only allows you to engage those right away, it offers the potential for spell disruption, which is key, especially as you move on to some of the more powerful mages and as you move into Dragon Spear. Now, naturally, a mage, the first thing they want to do is shields up, right? Get mirror image up. Get some defensive spells up, maybe later on, stone skin, things like that. If you have a thief, this is AD&D, if you have a thief that can hide, creep up, get into position, engage with the bow, try to get that first turn strike before the mage can pop off those spells, and then you can rush up with your close combat type warriors on there. So that's the advantage, being able to attack potentially every single turn. Now, damage output. Two possibilities on here that are going to work towards each other. You're going to be able to get a magical bow, and then you have magical ammunition. You can also fire magical ammunition through a non-magical bow. you have to be able to find, obtain, and purchase both of those. In some cases, takes a little bit longer versus, say, just getting or finding a really good weapon. But ammo is also key. Arrows, bolts, daggers, darts, they're consumables. And those stacks deplete pretty fast. Because again, hit or miss, you're attacking every single turn. And there's going to be a good amount of misses, even with skills, even with leveling up, even with magic bonuses, because you're going against that armor class. You're going against mirror images, where you may hit, but it knocks out one of the mirrors. So your consumption, you have to plan for that, both in not running out and also in being able to generate enough coin early on in the game. By the end of the game, Baldur's Gate 1, Siege, or Baldur's Gate 2, like many role-playing games, the internal balance is such, you have so much gold, there's not even anything you can spend it on. It's crazy. So, of course, the challenge is the beginning of the game, generating enough alpha to buy those expendable ammunition, and also mid-game being able to keep that up while, of course, you are saving up your gold pieces for some of those pieces of equipment that you want for the rest of your party or for your primary tune, being able to do that on there. So what is the transition in my mind? Ammo kind of breaks down into three types. Non-magical, then magical just with a +1 or a +2, and then magical with an effect, which will give you a +1 or +2 bonus, plus a secondary dice damage bonus, whether it's ice or explosion or poison. Ultimately, that's the type of ammunition that we want to get. Absolutely, on there. It can be very expensive, depending on your charisma modifier, depending on your reputation and who you're shopping with. You could be looking at bolts of biting. No spoiler there, since it's commonly available. You'll find the vendor that sells it. I think they're like, for 5 bolts, it's like 420 gold pieces for something on there, a little bit up or down depending on the modifiers of your reputation and charisma. That's expensive considering you're firing every single turn, hit or miss. That adds up. End game, okay, that's fine, but we want to get to these as quickly as possible. So here's kind of the formula that I apply on there. I want to maintain all 3 stacks filled as best as possible. When I get down to 1 stack left, at that point I want to think about rearming of ammunition on there. Making a run to whatever, the store, the vendor, picking it up depending on where I am in the game. Occasionally, if possible, for slot issues, for carrying capacity, I'll carry 1 or 2 full stacks either in my inventory, or I'll farm it out to one of my NPCs that has a lower strength that isn't going to be carrying heavy stuff anyway. So I'll give them some bolts, I'll give them some arrows. This gets modified, of course, if I have 1 or 2 or even 3 primary missile weapon type party members kind of pushing that out there. Early on, Baldur's Gate, I will stick with normal ammo, and then obviously if I find ammo along the way, I'm going to utilize that, absolutely. But I'm going to look to use normal ammo, and then I'm going to bypass the +1 and the +2 bolts and arrows. I'm going to go right to the specialty ammo, because this is a question of guaranteed damage with the +1, +2, or random damage, not only on when you hit to generate the damage from the bolt or the arrow, but also the special effects, on the biting or the ice or the explosion or the fire, whatever effects you're going to do. It has a better, even if you roll random, a better chance of dealing enough damage. So that's I want to pump all of my gold resources in there, because what you're going to find very quickly, remember, you got to buy armor, you got to buy some weapons. You're going to find a lot of stuff, but there's a lot of key magic items you want to buy. On top of that, you're going to be buying spells. On top of that, you're going to be buying potions and wands in the game. It adds up. So very quickly between you reach the midpoint of the game where the magic +1, +2 arrows and bolts, you're really not gaining that much. You could just shoot with regular, because you've got magical crossbows, you've got magical bows on there. I just want to save that cash completely I'll jump directly to the very, very specialized ammo and just try to keep that up. I will switch endgame to exclusively magic ammo. If we're fighting minions, kobolds, stuff with low hit dice on there, even stuff that's got some bite and tough, but not overly tough like Ettercaps, I'll just use regular ammo on it. Beginning of the game, mid-game. But by end game, we're completely transitioning over. Crossbows versus bows, ammunition. There are a couple of places, without giving away spoilers, bandits are attacking the Sword Coast up and down. If you move into some of the named wooded areas and you rest or you walk around, you will randomly encounter bandits and Black Talon elites. The bandits will have regular arrows. You'll be able to cut through those pretty quick, even though they're a little bit more numerous. You'll get some scalps, you'll sell them, fine, whatever. The Black Talon elite, they have some very, very potent magical arrows on there. The key here to dealing with them is closing quickly with a couple of your tunes, simply because then they'll switch over to their close combat weapons on there, their swords, and they're not magical. They still got some good armor class. They still got some good hit dice. I mean, they are elites, but certainly less dangerous than the bows. You take them out, you've got a nice little stock of arrows. I won't say farm extensively on that, but it's worth, if you're going to be a dedicated character, or a couple of your tunes are going to dedicate themselves to bows, and early on you're trying to save some cash to buy those signature magic items and kind of push yourself up, the Black Talon Elite give the double bonus of some decent XP, and they give those arrows on there. So, not hours, but 5 or 6 or 7 rests, maybe just 15 minutes of farming it is going to give you a nice little base early on that you won't have to spend the gold for those arrows. You can use the regular arrows, but now you have the stock of their specialized arrows to use in the mines and the early on bosses. That's going to catapult you forward onto there.